What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's been a while since I've done a stream, so let me go ahead and make sure everything is just good with the audio and everything. I have a really exciting stream tonight for y'all. So my boy Justin is going to be with us. I haven't had Justin on the channel in almost like maybe a year now. So I'm really excited for y'all to get to. All right, yep. So everything's good over there. I'm super excited for y'all to get to meet Justin and hear his story. For anybody who's new to the channel and hasn't seen the previous streams when we had him on, but he's got a really interesting and like unique way of getting into tech, becoming a developer. We both connected because we both were college athletes. We both played football back in college, so. Yeah, we both took a really untraditional route of going to coding bootcamp. We went to the same coding bootcamp too. So yeah, Justin's been professional developer for like a little bit longer than I have, like a few extra years. So yeah, I haven't had a chat with him myself in a little while. So we're gonna be catching up in real time. Y'all gonna be hearing me really asking him some questions about his career. Obviously, life after bootcamp is really important, but make sure y'all leave some comments in the comment section if y'all want any questions asked during the stream. I don't mind bringing it up, asking Justin. I'm sure he won't mind answering. And yeah, I got it scheduled for about an hour, but this is my boy, so I don't know how long we're gonna be here. So I got a outline that we're gonna go through some topics that I think hopefully y'all find valuable and everything. But again, we're here for y'all, provide value, answer questions, show you what it's like going through boot camp, talk about life after boot camp, getting our first jobs, our careers, after our first job, and just kind of navigating being untraditional, getting into tech. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, y'all. Go ahead, leave some comments, and appreciate y'all for just being here. And thank y'all for 1,000 subscribers, too. That's been part of the reason why I haven't uploaded in a few weeks. I've been planning some content and everything, just thinking about what direction I want to take the channel in. Because yeah, one of the goals was to hit 1,000 subscribers this year, but now that we've done it, yeah, I really just want to provide the best type of content that I can for y'all. So definitely gonna make sure that work on bringing y'all more just valuable content and just doing stuff that creatively kind of like makes me feel good and not burn out. So. Yeah. Yo, Pedro, what's going on, my dude? You're in boot camp? What boot camp are you in? Appreciate you joining in too, Pedro. So yeah, Justin should be here any second, y'all. And as soon as he gets here, I'll bring him in. And we're just gonna go ahead and jump right into it. Yeah, Pedro, let me know what boot camp you're in, man. Or like what are they teaching you at your boot camp? Yeah, so like I said, Justin and I went to the same boot camp, and we both worked at the same. We were coworkers actually at our first job together after boot camp, and that's where we met each other. So I'm super excited to kind of just catch up with him and just see kind of how his journey's been ever since. And then obviously with all the stuff that's happened recently in the last year with working from home and everything, we can catch up and talk about a lot of different things and get a lot of different aspects covered. So as soon as he calls in, we're gonna go ahead and add him to the call. But in the meantime, y'all, if you got any questions or anything you want to bring up, go ahead and just drop it down in the chat. And then I will get some. My bad, y'all. Gotta move it down for just a second. I'm gonna get some lo-fi going. So yeah, we'll just get some background streaming music going while we wait for Justin to show up. Uh, let me see. All right. Oh, yo, Justin, can you hear me? All right. Looks like he's here, but we just need to. Uh, sorry, y'all. We might be having some technical difficulties. Let me go ahead and shoot him a text. Make sure he can get in. All right, so yeah, I just shot him a text. Just want to make sure that I didn't. Just want to make sure I didn't. There we go.
Hey man, can you see me?
Justin, my dude, can you hear me?
Hey, yeah, how's it going, man?
Sweet man, yeah. I'm good, bro. I was just shooting you a text. My bad. I wasn't sure if you had already like something popped up like a guest. I wasn't sure if it was you or if it was something like a little something from the software.
Yeah,
Well,
no
what?
worries. Yeah, the I was just grabbing a snack real quick. I also forgot about the time change. So I thought I had more time than I did. Um,
Nah, you're
but yeah,
solid. You're solid, man. Where you coming in from? Where what state you in?
I'm in Oklahoma right now.
Oh, nice.
Yep, yep.
How's the weather down there?
It's a little chilly today, as you can see by the
Yeah, I
heat
was
map.
like, all right, yo. So I gave him like a slight intro, but not much. Just the fact that we went to the same boot camp, you played football, but a lot of people weren't here before on the channel from our last stream, which was ironically I think like over a year ago, honestly already. So if you want to just go ahead, go ahead and just let them know a little bit about your background and just give them a rundown how you got into coding, tech, all that good stuff.
Okay, yeah, and I'll try to try not to repeat what we talked about before. Try to hit you with the cliff notes.
Yeah.
Basically, I grew up like 20 minutes south of Detroit in the suburbs. Um, it's kind of just like a B student. Did all my homework, everything like that. Went where I was supposed to go. Yada yada. Getting like class clown, sarcastic kind of trouble, but nothing crazy. Um, and I just played sports to like chill, like to burn off some of that energy. You know what I mean? So it helped me being like basically the biggest kid at the school, so that contributed to that as well. So I played football and hockey through high school, played football through college. Um, was at a school called University of Findlay, D2 school in Ohio for 2 years, and then football was just getting like political and weird, and I just wanted to play, so I transferred to a D3 school, Adrian College in Adrian, Michigan, um, and finished out there. Played a bit, um, and that actually like so. I was a education major at Finley, and I was going to be a Spanish teacher at the high school level. But then when I transferred colleges, I transferred across the state lines, which puts you in a different like academic context. So I lost all my education credits. Um, so I basically at that time I had the choice, either add 2 years to get the credits that I had already gained at Finley, or add 2 years to get a master's degree. And I studied abroad in Spain because I was a Spanish education major, um, and I had studied abroad in Spain. Figured out that like okay, there's some intellectual stuff here going on that I really enjoy. So I'd rather teach at the college level because the odds of me being able to teach that stuff were higher. So I decided to get a master's degree to qualify me for teaching at least like at a community college level or higher. Did that. Got the master's degree, but I didn't do any research. Didn't like enough research, and a lot of like PhD. So side note, a lot of the way the PhD programs work are like you just kind of get your master's degree along the way, en route to a PhD. So I had better grades and would have had a better chance getting into PhD programs out of undergrad, but I screwed that up and went to a master's program that was really more for like high school teachers that were looking to gain pay raises via additional education. So I wasn't really prepared for like a PhD program when I left. And I applied to a couple schools, didn't get into any of them. Uh, and then basically was fortunate enough to get a job as a Spanish professor at a couple local community colleges in the Detroit area. And I did that for about 2 years, making somewhere around 12 grand a year for 2 years, driving all over the place and like basically face to face with the failings of our overall like our education system as a whole, and all these things kind of culminated in me looking for something else, looking to do something different. Um, so eventually, at the end of 2 years, I decided to try to massage my degree into something else, and massaging a master's in a liberal arts is into something else is quite difficult. Um, so eventually, it was just kind of trial and error. I worked a bunch of different jobs, and luckily I had you know, family to lean on during this time. Otherwise, who knows where I'd end up. So I'm definitely grateful for that because that bought me enough time to be able to like realize, okay, what I don't have, like what isn't on my resume that people are looking for, and eventually it was just obvious that I needed to add skills. So at that point in time, actually, my mom was always on me about Justin, you be a good lawyer kind of deal. So I looked at law school. Actually, I took the what's the LSAT. I studied for it. Took the LSAT with every intention of going to law school. And then as I was waiting for my test results, it was like, all right, if I don't want to take on any more student loans. So if I don't get a good enough score to get a scholarship, what am I going to do? Because I don't want to pay a bunch of money for another degree that may or may not work.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing some research, I had, coding and stuff like that was kind of on my radar. I knew about like, this is, 2013, 14, something like that. So like, it was still kind of like closer to the time when like apps were really blowing up. Like someone makes a hot new app, next thing you know, they're a billionaire overnight and whatever like that. So like making apps, like it was like I had ideas for some of them, but I knew I didn't have the tools to build that thing. So like coding and stuff like that was on my radar, but I just never considered it as like a something that I could do because I had a good education in terms of my computer literacy, but only at like a Microsoft Office sort of level. Like I can make emails with attachments and PowerPoints and Excel sheets and stuff, but
Yeah.
beyond that, I don't. Sort of like business analyst skills.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good with that, but that's about it. And so I'm sitting around waiting for my test results from the LSAT, and I came upon like coding boot camps as a concept. I was like, oh wow, this is actually they'll teach you, and then but it's only 6, 8, 12 weeks or whatever. Like you learn the gist of it, and they're saying that you're sort of like professionally intro ready at the end of it, and that led me to finding Grand Circus, which was in its second or third year, downtown Detroit. Um, and then I did a little bit more research, and then there were a couple of like family friends that had some work experience that were like, um, "Hey, do the coding thing." He was like one of the guys was like an exec at Ford, and he was basically like, from his perspective, he's like, definitely do that. There's more room. It's not as saturated. So took some of that feedback just through talking to people, and then by this point, I was beyond making decisions without researching them ahead of time. Um, Needless to say, I learned my lesson at this point. So I did some market research, started looking at like actual like salary expectations of people with 3 years experience kind of deal, like 1 to 3. And then job growth was the big like piece of data that I found that was like, oh shit, this is sorry, I
No, you're
shouldn't
good.
curse,
You're good.
but
You're good. No, you're good.
um the so like the job growth numbers were undeniable.
Hmm.
And then it was like, oh wow, let's do this, and then so I got on the Grand Circus's website, saw the process, filled out an application. After doing an initial, now that I'm thinking back on it, like I applied for the back end Java bootcamp.
Hmm.
Um, but I applied to that because it sounded with a just total beginner sort of view, it sounded like it would be the most applicable thing. So I applied to that one.
Hmm.
Um, and from at that time, it was basically like, why wouldn't I want to know how to build the brains of the application? Like, of course I'm going to want to know how to do that. Like, let's do that, with no real idea of what that actually meant,
Hmm.
or an understanding of front end versus back end development. I had no idea about any of that. So I
Hmm.
applied to the back end Java bootcamp, finished that up in like 10 weeks or whatever it was.
Hmm.
And then, despite my best efforts, like I actually made it through. And uh, and then my like group, um, I think probably like, I don't know the actual numbers. It's like 25 out of 30 of us, 20
Hmm.
out of 25, something like that.
Hmm.
Like 2/3 of us basically all got hired in one big cohort, at United Shore, where you and I met, as part of like a hiring agreement that Grand Circus had made with United Shore about sort of funneling bootcamp students over to them. United Shore says, hey, we'll pay them less than market value, but we'll train them up to do things like the way we do things. We're from our perspective, we didn't have any experience, so it was decent money and experience, so we all took it, United Shore gets 1 to 3 years out of all of us for less than market value, and both sides won basically.
Hmm.
Um, so then now we're in development world. I was there for 3 years. So United Shore was a .NET shop. So basically, the first thing they did was convert a bunch of Java boot campers immediately into just like .NET ecosystem. Here's how all this works, and they gave us another like 3 months of training or so. And then from there, we were all sort of dispersed amongst the development floor onto various teams based on interest, skill set, and like company need in any given team. So I was put on the risk team. I was there for a little while, and it was just a regular application development. That's where I learned jQuery, .NET MVC, um, and ASP.NET, like that kind of stuff. Building out their internal web application. Eventually, we got some of us got drafted to the tier 3 arm of app support, where I was for about 9 months to a year, something like that, where we were just debugging everything across the entire stack. So SQL database, we had a loan origination system that was written in Lisp, or Scheme. It's a Lisp variant. It's a functional programming language. So debugging across that, then all like repository layer all the way up through the business logic, and then MVC, excuse me, and then into the front end as well. Like I said, it's where I learned jQuery, HTML, CSS, which was naturally is where a lot of the bugs were. Um, this is right about when React, Vue, and Angular were starting to take off as well, and Bitcoin. So I went down the blockchain
React. Would you just say React, Angular, and Bitcoin?
Yeah. So single page applications were coming out, and I was into them, but I did have a little time where I was hardcore into the blockchain stuff. Like, oh, this is gonna change everything in Bitcoin, whatever. Um,
Oh.
so then I got pulled off app support. Eventually, app support wasn't what management was looking for, so they spread us all back out amongst the teams. I kind of went back to the risk team. By the time I got there, they had already adopted this Edge, the proprietary framework that United Shore had built for itself, and it was sort of a easy bake oven website generator, something that like a company like Microsoft would normally build. But they decided to build it all custom to their stuff, to the way they had things set up. And they adopted it, and that was great. I was building applications again, but it was back on like, I mean, we were on the same team, like what it was like. It was basically writing a bunch of XML outside of a. I mean, we had Notepad++, but beyond that, no source control, no like debugging tools of any kind. Just the wild west of just XML development. Um, and it was just obvious that, especially as I started learning more about React, that like there was a lot of really cool stuff going on in development in general, and that those were the skills that were going to be necessary um, to get a job, land, maintain a career in the industry. But that simultaneously, based on where I was on my team, like I wasn't learning any of them, nor was it wasn't even like, all right, I'm learning like C++ or something crazy that could pay dividends and open up doors for me. It's like, no, I'm just stuck in this proprietary framework that only they use, that doesn't really bring a lot of skill benefit with it at all, even in terms of just generic development skills. So
Mhm.
um, that's when I started looking, and really at that time, I basically had to make the sacrifice on the home front that basically like the rest of my life was going to have to take a back seat to my skill development, because I still needed the job and the paycheck and everything like that, to keep the lights on. But there was extra effort required in order for me to get where I was trying to go. So I basically just devoted, I go to work every day, do what was required of me, and then come home and then spend 4 hours a night or whatever it was, learning React. And basically, for whatever reason, I kind of gravitated towards JavaScript, which is actually a trend that's emerging amongst bootcamp students, which I read about recently, which we could talk about later. But just started learning React, got to know that, and then actually you were applying for a job, and I was called as reference, and then I just asked the recruiter if they had anything, and
Mhm.
that's how the Ford job found me.
Mhm.
And they had just transitioned to building this like prototype application in React, and they were light on React experience. So I basically had learned it well enough on my own to walk in the door. So now we're up to when like right before COVID started,
Mhm.
and that's when I got the job. It was December, right before COVID. I got the job offer. Um, and then because of COVID, there was a little bit of a hiring delay. So by March of last year, I started at Ford. So I had an extra like 2 months or so, 3 months to just study React more. And then by day one, when I started at Ford as a contractor,
Mhm.
I was at a place where I knew React better than the rest of the team, or most of the team. There was one other guy that hired in with me that knew it better than me, but he saw what was going on, and he bounced within 2 weeks. You know what I mean? He was he got a good
Really?
look at what was happening. Yeah, there was he was more from like a design background,
Mhm.
and he was just kind of like getting tired with web development and was just kind of over it anyway. So
Okay.
I think there was a little bit more going on there.
Mhm.
Um, but that left me as like, all right, you're the React guy, so everybody else like knew how to use it, like with like the syntax, like they could get create React app site off the ground. Like they could get that far, but
Mhm.
they're started like you're talking enterprise level now. It's not just like a Heroku project. So now the more technical expertise was required, and it was given to me to be like the front end lead of that effort. And so I was active in development as well, but I also had to basically be the front end architect of our projects,
Mhm.
inside of the Ford ecosystem, which was
Mhm.
baptism by fire, to say the least. Um, and then as it was my first go at that, um, there was I made some mistakes, and there was some things that I probably could have done better, but it ultimately culminated in just kind of the not really a good end product in the web in the site itself.
Mhm.
And a lot of that was there was a lot of like infrastructural stuff just in being in part of Ford, and there were a lot of reasons for the way we wound up. But I was just kind of over it, which can be interpreted as me just like building a dog shit site and then bailing. Um, but that wasn't my. It's not like that was my intent. Even if that's what happened, my intent certainly was that it was just kind of working through those growing pains. Um, and it just kind of came down to like, all right, look, me and the manager kind of had a conversation like, this is the way you see yourself going. I'm not really on board for the way that this is trending, so I think I'm just going to take my chances elsewhere. Um, then I let's see. Then I started looking for a job, and immediately got an interview and actually got accepted for a job in Dallas, and then failed a drug test. Lost that job opportunity. I mean, this is real life. This is real talk. I mean, we got
Yeah. Go ahead, man. Yeah.
without those details, it makes it seem like I just went on a sabbatical and then ended up finding this job where I'm at now, and that's not what happened. I actually had a job offer in my hands, and then and it was a hospital, and I it was one of those things I didn't foresee a drug test
Mm,
being an issue, and it caught me.
mm,
So lesson
mm.
learned. So if for viewers, like if you're going to apply to a hospital, give it 30 days if you know what I mean. So so then I started. Then I was back on the job market again, right? Like I thought I was yeah, I thought I was good, and honestly, the way that like I mean, dude, you play football as well. Like the
Yeah.
dude interviewed me for that hospital. Like his son just started playing college football at like a Dallas college.
Oh wow.
Um, so like in the interview, everything's lined up, and I was just like, I was this dude's favorite person. You know what I mean? And like they
Yeah.
really didn't ask me any technical questions. It was just perfect. And then and then I get now that after that went away, I basically like I was on the job grind again and just interviewing, and it was just for the next 3 4 months maybe. Um, just the grind of dealing with recruiters and constant Skype and coding challenges, building projects, uh, uh,
Mhm.
one-on-one, like pair programming, developer sessions, not to
Mhm.
mention HR screenings and just the whole grind that comes with job searching.
Mhm.
And then eventually, timing just worked out. Like a girl that, so Chelsea Kowalski is her name. She worked with us at United Shore. She was on BA on Epsport, and
Mhm.
she had just moved to a logistics company that's based out of Buffalo, LDI, but it was through the sort of CIO lives in Michigan, and she met him through like it was either a boyfriend, friend of a friend, something like that, and got
Mhm.
in there as a BA, and a real small startup kind of like it basically is like a logistics company that got bought out by some venture capital guys,
Mhm.
and now they're investing in IT to really beef that out because there's meat on the bone there. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
they started investing on that. She starts reaching out to all the developer folks that she knows, um, and she sent me a message. I just happened to be looking. I responded, hey, what's going on? She put me in touch with the CIO. We talked. He had me talk to all the about my experience, where they were going, things that they wanted to do, and stuff like that. He made sure I got along with the existing developers, and then they offered me a job, and I've been there now for just about 2 months, maybe just over 2 months.
Mhm.
Digging it so far. It's there's only 6 people on our like that's all of
Mhm.
our of app dev basically,
Okay.
and that includes the CIO and BA. So there's only 4 developers, and definitely nowhere near the like infrastructural challenges that like Ford and UWM have, but um, the total opposite end of the spectrum in terms of what our problems are. Like we
Mhm.
inherited a code base that worked, but was written by these 2 guys just on the fly, and that no longer work at the company. So out of the 4 developers, the longest tenured developer, the lead dev right now, has only been there a year and a half.
Oh
So
wow.
he has the most subject matter expertise, but it's all in applications that we're now actively trying to refactor and transition into a more modern approach. So
Oh wow.
um, we um, we've kind of got our existing applications, and then we've got our baby on the side, which is the new hotness, which is where is going to house all of our refactored business features, and that's going to be a Vue.js application.
Okay.
So we're getting that off the ground.
Mhm.
So I've been learning Vue. Um, we can talk about the difference. Like it depends on the scope of the conversation. I mean, I'll talk about all
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
It's all super for
Yeah.
people. It's not interesting to everyday people, but for people looking into this stuff, it's very
Yeah.
very interesting. I learned quite a bit along the way. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's where I'm at now. We got a lot of like startup level problems. Like hey, databases, like oh, we got to add a column to the database now. Everything's broken.
Mhm.
What's going on? Like why is this? Oh, well, we're storing this as a session variable in the browser. Well, why are we doing that? I don't know. Move it to the controller. You know? And
Mhm.
so it's um, a lot of hey, make the call. Like find the problem, make the call.
Mhm.
And there isn't necessarily going to be someone on the team that has an answer for you in terms of what you
Right.
should do. There's no architectural support. I mean, it's just, hey, we need to keep the lights on and make this better in route to a friendly, pleasant developer experience.
Mhm.
Um, and it's a .NET ecosystem again. I didn't mention Ford was a little like Java, and I kind of saw that again. I was like, oh, I already learned all this C# stuff, so let's get back to full stack. C# React was kind of my approach when I was looking for this job. Um, and then we just made the call out of the best interest for our team. We just made the call Vue was a better choice. So um, .NET backend, mostly MVC, and we're kind of talking about what might be microservices one day, SQL
Mhm.
database, and then um, you know Vue front end with a lot of Razor pages, a lot of
Mhm.
Razor pages as well. And then we do have one application that's all win forms and stuff. Um,
Mhm.
that's where we're at. That's my day to day. That's what I was doing all day today. That's where I find myself most days in my COVID bubble. Just trying to get better. Just trying to get better as a developer, person, employee, because
Mhm.
that's all that's really there right now. There isn't a lot of room for much else. So,
Yeah.
um,
No, that's a great intro.
you know,
I'm gonna catch up on some comments real quick, just while we were chatting.
okay.
There was a few.
Let
So
me see what else
Pedro,
I do.
yeah. So Pedro says, I'm in boot camp right now. It's a self-paced boot camp called Code Institute, learning JavaScript and Python. I've completed my first JavaScript project, which I found quite difficult, to be fair. Any feedback? Any feedback on that one for Pedro?
And basically just say he's just struggling with his current project.
Yeah, he said he's in a self-paced boot camp called Code Institute, learning JavaScript and Python. Completed his first JavaScript project, and he found it to be quite difficult, to be fair.
Yeah. So the feedback that I would give is that while the boot camp, so boot camp specific stuff first, while the boot camp that I attended got me a job at UWM, it wasn't because of my technical preparation, if that makes any sense. I didn't get my job off of merit of tech. I wasn't ready. I just wasn't. I just happened to fit the model that United Shore was looking for in terms of who they're trying to bring in. Let's just bring in a bunch of freshies and we'll school them up. Don't as long as they're a cultural fit, we'll bring them in. And they just wanted to bring as many in at the same time as they wanted to. Um, in terms of my ability at that point, about as dumb as you could possibly be. I was terrible, even at the end of my boot camp, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the thing to that comment specifically, the one thing to keep in mind, especially self-paced, is one, you're going to have to do all that professional lifting on your own because unless they have add-on services or additional services that come with that boot camp, even if it is, self-paced.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're gonna have to keep an eye on the professional stuff for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But the sort of note of encouragement there is that look, you're a boot camp student right now. Don't worry about it. You're struggling. You're supposed to struggle. I literally worked on a bug all day today, just like pulling my hair out about async methods in C#
Mm-hmm.
because I'm used to doing them in JavaScript now, but C#'s different, and I can't remember what I'm doing wrong. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You gotta get used to. And I mean, I'm not sure where Pedro's from. Us being from Detroit, just the Midwest mentality of grind it. Even if it's not a good idea, if you grind it out, everything's gonna work out in the end, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. That's sort of the workman sort of approach that I've taken towards my learning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I've gotten over time. I've gotten better at knowing what is important, what I should dive deeper into, and what I need to let
Right.
go.
Yeah.
Um, because at the end of the day, you can't know it all. I mean, even what did he say in his comment about his? the project that he's working, like the boot camp itself was like Python and SQL or something?
Python and JavaScript, and he said his JavaScript he finished his first JavaScript project, but he said it was quite difficult, which I can understand because
Okay.
when I first learned JavaScript, it was tough too. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, and that's the thing. Like the what I noticed, like looking back on how I went about learning things, it was a lot of smash. Like, get this book,
exactly.
read the book, learn the stuff, right? And then you do enough of that, and you can start seeing where you're making mistakes. Or I do a lot of Udemy courses,
Hmm.
just to hone in on a particular like, all right, REST APIs, let's go, 8 hour
Hmm.
8 hour courses, all right, done.
Hmm.
Um, at first though, I did a very like it was very because it's you're trying to drink through a fire hose at the beginning of all this, right?
Exactly.
You're
Yeah.
trying
Exactly.
to understand what do I need to know,
Right.
what I want to know everything. Like obviously,
Right.
like it's part of just being a good student, right? You're open minded to learning everything, but there you do have to prioritize. So to
Hmm.
that point, like are you going to be looking for a job that's Python and JavaScript? Because if you are, then you need to know those things cold and forget about. People start talking about Docker and Azure and all this kind. Forget about all that. Know JavaScript and Python cold
Hmm.
and target those jobs. You know, like, and
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
it's going to get you in the door. It's going to get you experience. Later, you can branch out when you're more comfortable with those things. But um, I had a tendency to sort of bite off more than I could chew. Like, all right, I'm gonna take on microservice architecture. I'm gonna take on promises in JavaScript, and I'm gonna learn Python too at the same time. And it's
Hmm.
like we're
It's a
only
lot.
human.
It's a lot
You can
going
only
on.
learn. Yeah, it's
And
too
depending
much.
on what you're doing, it's completely different. Like the ecosystem can be
Yep.
completely different.
And I mean even Python and JavaScript. I mean those are two of my favorite languages. So it is a great. I think those are a great combo. Like when you look at Stack Overflow or like the user adoption and use rates of Python and JavaScript. Both of them growing wildly. Both of them super versatile. JavaScript
Hmm.
covers all your browser stuff. You can even do full stack development just in that.
Hmm.
But Python also opens the door to machine learning, data science, as well as just back end code and stuff. So they're
Hmm.
great choices, but they're two different languages that generally are used that have specific use cases. They're different tools for different things,
Right.
and yeah, there's some overlap as well. But you gotta keep in mind that they are two different things. Like
Right.
um, like dot map in JavaScript, right? That's not the same in every language. So if you're learning two languages at the same time, um,
Yeah.
you might get those confused. It might blur together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would definitely advise like moving forward in JavaScript, stay away from React and Vue and Angular. Stay away from all the fancy libraries and stuff until you're really comfortable with JavaScript. There's
JavaScript.
um
Hmm.
there's a really good Udemy. I think it's initially like a YouTube video that's like 3 hours, but then there's like a 10-hour Udemy course on JavaScript, like learning the weird parts or something like that. I can get you the link. Um, I took that course, and this was 6 months ago, so well into my progression, and it just explains all the nuts and bolts in JavaScript about JavaScript in a way that I had never seen before. It just made the inner guts of JavaScript make so much more sense to me, and
Yeah.
ever since it's enhanced my abilities in React and Vue and all of these kind of things. But it's like core, it's
Hmm.
core JavaScript. So focused on that. And honestly, I've made that decision myself. Like I started learning React too fast. I started learn like I didn't know enough about JavaScript to really get what React was trying to do. So a lot of my understanding was like, is this ES6 or is this React? I don't actually know because I
Hmm.
learned them at the same time. So, the, all right. So long story short, JavaScript JavaScript fatigue or being overwhelmed by all the decisions that come with using JavaScript is a real thing. So when you change jobs, that could mean you're changing libraries. You might be working with React and Tailwind CSS one day, and then Vue and just regular CSS the next, right? That
Hmm.
stuff changes, but core JavaScript is core JavaScript that translates.
That's
Core
true.
CSS, whether you're using a preprocessor or a utility library or whatever, if you know CSS, you know CSS, and that is one thing as a side note, like something that
That's a good point.
especially back-end developers neglected CSS.
Yeah.
So that's something where you could, because I mean, look, at the end of the day, you're
So.
going to a boot camp to add value to your skill set to get a job. So you want to target things that are going to add value to the team you're on once you get that job. That's going to help get you in the door.
Yep.
You know.
So we
So
got some.
to his, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, yep. No, go ahead. Go ahead and finish your thought. I'm gonna move on to the other two comments.
Okay. Yeah. So the like to so on the Python side of things, I know there are like you can build websites with like Flask and Django and stuff like that, but I would for Pedro I would compartmentalize the two into Python for your backend, um, and just figure out backend code, building object oriented Python for your backend, right, and then figure out how to get that up to the JavaScript, and then use JavaScript for your front end stuff. Don't neglect HTML and CSS. Keep it simple. Give yourself some slack. Like keep working, but don't be too hard on yourself because this is a lot. There's a lot of shit going on. Like this stuff is insane. At the end of the day, like.
For sure. We got D Horton who says in Grand Circus right now. So shout out to you, D Horton, man. Good luck. Hope that's going well for you. And then we've got Scott Karnowski, and he says, I'm working on my capstone project in Bootcamp this week, Kinsey Academy, MERN app. What is the difference between React and Vue and Angular? So I'm guessing that one's for you, Justin.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so the sort of trend like in all right, so we got to understand like all right, I'll just get right to the point, right? So web development is always it's always evolving. It's always changing. And what we're seeing, the stereotype now is that like that I've seen in like some forums and stuff is like real developers are actually back-end developers. And that has like been the stereotype, but like
right.
Front end because of mobile, because of like just the way architecturally things are shifting.
There's equally as much stuff to know in the front end. Like
it's blowing up. Like if you just look at the number of JavaScript libraries in NPM alone, holy shit! Like there's so much going on, and front end architecture is relatively new. Honestly it's a new thing. So definitely the thing to keep in mind is that this is always in motion. It's a moving target. That said, what the current sort of emerging or sort of prevalent view in web development right now is single page applications, right? So a traditional, so just for the question, a traditional website sends you a blob of stuff in HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and it gives you your landing page. And then you'll have links, buttons, and you interact with the landing page, right? In a traditional, .NET, in like an MVC kind of situation or whatever, like traditional website, you would click a link. The link would send a request to the server. Server sends a response with the new information. Browser updates. You move on buying your, hammock or whatever you're buying, right? A single page application says, like, as browsers get stronger, as JavaScript becomes more standardized, more mainstream, more like the community is growing, right? What a single page application says is give me the initial dump of like what the base, like the structure of the website, and give me all the JavaScript and load the page. And then what you do from there, it's a single page application. That's literally what it means. Now, once the page is loaded, everything you do is just housed inside the browser. Now there's still API calls and other things going on, but that's outside the scope of the question. So a single page application now says, you give me the initial state of the application. I can interact with it, change things, click buttons, add text, all this kind of stuff. We'll track all of those changes in the browser. And then at the end of that, whatever process you're involved in, send the updated information to the server. And it's usually your CRUD, create, save, update, delete, whatever the case may be. But so that's what a single application is. Okay, from there, Vue, Angular, and React are all libraries or frameworks that build single page applications. .NET or Microsoft has one as well. It's called Blazor, but the behavior is the same. Like you build a website, interact with it, kick out the response at the other end, right? So a single page application, it leaves us in the browser, which naturally leaves us in pure JavaScript world, basically. So now what this allows you to do is this is just I'm just paraphrasing the current method or ideology, right? So
Yeah, you're good.
now I don't have to send like in an MVC request like you're sending your response based on your model or whatever, and you can still do that. But what we're doing now with a single page application, well, I guess it's true for MVC as well. But anyway, basically it gets us to this place where our backend API sends us a bunch of JSON, and then the front end can just take that JSON and do whatever with it needs to do. And then the response normally gets sent back in JSON as well, and that's kind of like the world that we're all living in. You know, um, basically at the end of the day, the short answer to the question is those three things all build single page applications. There are a lot of differences between those. Um,
Exactly.
Angular is a full blown framework. You pretty much have to adopt the whole thing and follow their rules to do it. It's written in TypeScript, very TypeScript heavy. React is a library that allows you to do the same thing, but you can adopt it like little by little. You don't have to do anything.
Hmm.
They're very hands off. And Vue is a happy medium between the two. Um, what I would recommend if you're looking like first just look into these things, figure out what those are. Um, as a React developer transitioning into Vue, I can't speak highly enough about how pleasant the developer experience has been in terms of
Hmm.
onboarding as a Vue developer. Their
Really.
documentation, their community, their documentation are both phenomenal.
Hmm.
They have a little bit of enforced structure, not a lot, but just enough to keep things organized. Which I like.
Hmm.
It's very and at the end of the day, um, you don't have to learn JSX like you do with React, where there's like hybrid JavaScript kind of shit going on.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, it just keeps things in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript
Oh,
clean.
really? Okay.
Real separation of concerns is nice.
Yeah.
Um,
I only dabbled with
yeah,
Vue for a second. I didn't really get into it. So yeah, that's cool
it's
to hear.
same. And like having played around, I haven't played around with Angular as much. I did the original version, then they rewrote the whole thing. I never went back to it because I didn't like it. But
Hmm.
um, having played around in Vue and React a decent amount each, they're both solving the same problems at the end of the day. Like
Hmm.
there's a lot of heated like don't get to, my advice would be don't get distracted by all the message boards saying which one's better because
Yeah,
they're both
exactly.
solving the same problem. And to
Yep.
my previous point about just getting good at JavaScript, they're both JavaScripts. That's at the end of the day, the better you can get as a JavaScript developer, the better you're going to be at either one of them, right? So, and that's actually there's a TED talk by one of the PR guys for the Vue team, because Vue is just totally open source, not maintained by a big corporation. So they send this guy around as like an advocate. I forget his name,
Hmm.
and he consults with organizations, and they're basically like, well, we can commit to Vue, but we're worried we're not going to end up being able to hire Vue developers because there aren't many in our area or whatever. And his response to that is basically like, don't just look for Vue developers, look for JavaScript developers. Hire a JavaScript developer, give them a day or two in the documentation, and they're going to know how to use Vue. And that's kind of part of the sort of like the ethos that makes up Vue. It's complicated enough to do all the complicated shit, but at the same time, it doesn't leave out beginners. Like
Hmm.
hey, let's make this as friendly and to get involved with as possible because it's an open source community, and the more
Hmm.
involvement, the better. And I really I really like that. And just a final point about React versus Vue. Part of what I was doing at Ford, like I said, was the front end architecture stuff, making all these decisions. Well, React is so hands off to the point where you have to determine do you need a styling library? How are you going to handle forms? How are you going to do this, that? And like there's a thousand different questions, and each one of them has 15 different libraries to choose from.
Hmm.
And Vue has those libraries as well, but they also include a lot of like the norm sort of baked in approach that everybody uses. And then you could just bring in an additional library if your use case requires it. But if not, just use the basic out of the box functionality. And it's basically like uh, um, Redux, right? Like Redux, you can use Redux with Vue, but my point is with React, it's like, all right, let's bring in Redux um, for state management, right? Whereas Vue comes out of the box with Vuex, which is a built-in state management tool. Now,
Hmm.
if you prefer Redux, you can still use it. It's everything is all opt-in. Um, but I've found my life my developer life better after I started working with you. At least as of right now, like I've only been here 2 months, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll hate it in 3 months.
No, that's cool. But yeah, so he said thank you back. So I don't know if you're still with us, Scott, but hopefully that helps, man. And you're definitely welcome. So appreciate you for being here and all y'all for
Hey, keep at it, man.
dropping comments.
Don't get discouraged, man. Like that's the this you're there's a lot of emotion involved with like learning and being a human. Um,
Hmm.
but at the end of the day, the solution you're looking for has an objective answer. It's a computer. Everything's ones and zeros. You know, like don't. Someone's probably been here, so definitely learn
Hmm.
how to Google. Definitely just stay the course. Like
Hmm.
you keep at it long enough, everything's gonna break for you.
That's what's up, man. That's really good advice. So so you covered a lot in the intro. So I'm gonna skip down our list a little bit, but
Okay.
we also talked about I have some kind of on the fly questions going back to kind of your job and some of that stuff. But that sounds really interesting. So like uh, working so total opposite, like you said, problems of working at bigger companies before. So
Yep.
what is that kind of like in terms of like y'all planning or architecture, having like a small team of like six and no real subject matter experts and stuff like that? Like how do y'all kind of camaraderie wise, teamwork wise, like collaboration, how does that look kind of like doing all this in a small team environment?
Yeah. Well, and right now it's kind of an ugly process in terms
Mm-hmm.
of the lack of process, right? You know, like
Mm-hmm.
we're just young, we're small. So
Mm-hmm.
like part of what we're doing is moving towards more agile stuff inside of a in tandem with a business that has waterfall concerns, and that's not, as you know, I mean, as you know, it's not an easy process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then Chelsea's our BA, right? She's coming from UWM's background, a place that's like evangelical agile. So that's the language she speaks, right? So she's trying to
Mm-hmm.
get everything lined up like that. But the two existing developers that were there before don't necessarily work like that, and we got to get all that ironed out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like even in terms of like, hey, let's use this library for this thing. Like we don't have a process that goes over like whether or not that's a good idea. You know, laying
Exactly. So
technical debt. Like we don't have that. We don't have it at all.
yeah, wow. So there's a lot of thought that has to go into everything that gets done. Everything,
Yep.
because I mean, this is going to impact y'all going forward in the future. So even if there is, like you said, a library that takes care of this one specific problem right now, is this the best thing for the team in the code base, long run, company, everything,
Yep.
long term?
Yeah, so like just as like a concrete example, a lot of what I've been helping out with is like we onboarded a new client that needs like some pretty client specific logic in the code, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've been helping the guy that wrote this application um, make enhancements, tweaks as they come through, and we're just manually testing everything and then getting feedback from the business. I mean that's our working process right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the reality is like even the like the lead in this scenario, like he feels bad because there's a lot of holes in the application, right? But the reality is he was under the gun to get this thing out, like hey, get this thing done. So he did everything the way he knows how to do it, and he also didn't have time to make all these really detailed considerations. It was like, does it work? Great, moving on. Oh, validation, yeah, I'll come back. We'll do that later. Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It works. I got to get something working out the door. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a very real life project in that the
Mm-hmm.
guy that wrote it was under the gun and didn't have the luxury of having any help or time to get it
Mm-hmm.
done. So
Mm-hmm.
we're now we're going back through because he's got more there's more resources. Now we're going back through and ironing some of that stuff out. And like he feels bad about this stuff. It's like, hey man, don't it's not like, don't worry about it. We're good. We're just cleaning this thing up. We're trying to enhance this thing, make it better. It's not personal. Like it's all good. It's all good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there's a lot of you don't realize how much logic falls through the cracks until you start really trying to track down bugs, right?
Of
You know,
course.
like here we go. Like, all right, I got to find this thing. How are we doing this? Does this work? Like, and now all the business questions start coming into play. And I mean,
Yeah.
it's a grind, especially right now. But the goal is that we eventually get to a place that um, makes things easier because this same person that wrote this application is our deployment bottleneck as well. So
Okay, so it's like y'all are kind of it's like an uphill battle to getting to a decent kind of standard
yeah,
place where y'all could just
yep.
maintain the
And
code and
and the to boil it down in a nutshell is basically like keeping the lights on while adding features.
hmm
And adding features is one thing, but adding features in a way that's like extendable and nice and in an application that everybody wants to work at, like
hmm
that's a challenge when they're up against business concerns because oh they want
right.
three values added to this drop down, get it done. And it's like, well, the drop down should probably get reworked. Well, we don't have time for that, just add it. And then like there's this give or take in project management that is
hmm
delicate to say the least because you can only prioritize those business concerns so long before you've got the biggest spaghetti code monster of a code base that
hmm
is extremely hard to maintain. You got to rewrite the whole damn thing anyway, so
hmm
um but yeah, it's at least interesting. Now, like the one thing from a decision making standpoint, like you got to know a lot more. Like if you're gonna, so if you're thinking about getting into a job where there's less people, the same tasks need to get done. Businesses are businesses; they have the
Exactly.
same needs.
Right.
So if you're in a big company, especially starting out, it's a good thing because everything is so segmented. There's a front end team and a back end team and a database team, and
hmm
you're only concerned about what your specific team is concerned about. Up
hmm
here, it's like I'm tracking a UI bug and I've got to verify if the data in the database is the same as what I'm seeing to make sure my results are right. So got to be able to track it back all the way through the back end to get to where it is in the database, find it in the database, verify the information, and when you get done, there's a big sense of accomplishment because, wow, hey, I've actually grown a lot, I actually know a lot, but
hmm
there's nobody sitting there waiting to throw you a parade,
hmm hmm
it's just hey, you solved it, good. Here's the next thing. Everything's still on fire. Um, so it can be a little thankless on that front, you know what I mean? But
right.
as long as you're not looking for your own like personal validation to come from your job like that,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
you're it's fine. Yeah, it's fine.
That's huge, man. That sounds like there's a lot of room to contribute, like to like start things. So like you might bring in a new initiative or idea or process that you can help shape kind of the development culture, company culture.
Yep.
It's a lot of
Yeah,
lot of room to
and based
grow.
on
Yeah.
based on my experience with, so just like as an example of experience translating, like my even if I quote unquote failed at Ford in my project management front end architecture sort of stint there, because I have that experience doing that. I now I'm gonna have the opportunity to do the same thing with our new application in Vue, where it's like, all right, you've already kind of gone down this road. You know some of the concerns. Like none of us really have that kind of experience. So hey, why don't you take the lead on this?
hmm
Um, Start divvying at least even if it's just divvying out tasks and keeping the project moving where it needs to move.
hmm
Um, then now all of a sudden I find myself generating value in a new job based on something I did in an old one. So it all
Exactly.
builds. And honestly, dude, like I can't tell you how many times I look back on like experiences from UWM in our time there, and I mean, the struggles that came along with that. Um, but now with time comes perspective. So like I can look back on it all now and be like, okay, I get why this was happening. Okay, that makes sense. With less
hmm
emotional attachment to the thing, now it's
hmm
like, oh, okay, I actually did the right thing. I just focused on my own skill development. Okay, cool. Like
hmm
mental note. Let's keep doing that. So like no
hmm
matter what, I guess that's my thesis statement of this whole spiel here is just no matter what happens, just stay true to your North Star. Where do you want to be? What do you want to do? Work towards that, even if it's after hours after your job, even if you have to make sacrifices. If it's important enough to you, you'll make it happen. And we're lucky enough to be in a field that's growing very fast. There's a lot, and then a lot of things are changing and evolving. So new roles that front end architect or something like that. Like not
Yeah.
that those things didn't exist before, but they didn't exist in the mainstream. And now it's all of a sudden becoming like not even just that, but like interpersonal skills, like
Of course.
managing being on a remote team, even if you weren't expecting it, like
Of course.
all these things, being able to communicate your ideas, translate ideas, they're all, if you have
hmm
any experience with any of those things, they're gonna translate into
hmm
a job. The goal is just the barrier to entry for tech jobs,
Exactly.
getting in the door, and the way current interviews are done it's all over the board. It's hard to feel like you're gaining any traction, and it is kind of just a numbers game, unfortunately. And I mean that to me, that's honestly like the problems with current tech interview processes. That's like a whole other live stream session in and of
Yeah.
itself. You know what I mean?
Well, you're also at that like career north star for developers where you're at like what 3+ years in a job as well. So how did that change kind of your interview process compared to when you first came out the door? I mean, luckily, I mean, we both had the chance to get kind of like you said, scooped up out of boot camp, so we didn't really have
Yep.
the same kind of tedious grind in the beginning out of boot camp. I mean, I went through a lot of like 11 interviews. I interviewed a lot and I got rejected a lot. And I had a couple other offers, but ended up deciding, on UWM. Um,
Yep.
but things, and I can't even say like I had the experience of being on the job hunt after that 3 year mark because apparently that's really where, as a developer anyway, that's where I hear things open up, and you've got a lot more leeway. Like, so how has
Yep.
it been for you since that?
So when I when I started my job search, I put my resume on Dice, and Dice is one of the big ones that recruiters troll for potential clients, and they'll do
Mm-hmm.
like geographic specific searches and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I put my resume up on Dice, and immediately my phone just started blowing up. I mean, like
Really,
5 to 15 calls a day, like
really. Oh my
just
god.
constantly, and like to the spam level, right? Like a lot, like they're not all
Oh, they're not
um,
all like quality
they're
leads. Yeah.
quality jobs, yeah, or jobs that I want to do. They just
Right.
I loosely fit the criteria, and they're trying to
Hit
hit
you
their
up.
quota, so they'll take a
Mm-hmm.
chance on it or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there wasn't a shortage of like so that's the difference, like in like the initial job versus the 3 year mark.
Mm-hmm.
Way more callbacks in general, like just way more callbacks, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but that said, like my interview process itself was just me perpetually getting beasted by different interview questions, like just getting hammered, right? So even going back, like we did that Stephen Grider course on Udemy, right? When
Mm-hmm.
we were studying back in the day, like going back through all that, going over my algorithms and stuff like that. I was doing that, but inevitably, every time I get to an interview, the question that they had, the way they had it set up, um, it would always be in such a way that I hadn't prepared for, that I hadn't ever seen before, which resulted in me struggling in those interviews, like specifically with the coding challenges. It's like, oh well, oh man, I know how to do this kind of, but I kind of like would Google it and I'd get through it and get it done. But that's not what they're looking for. Like they want to know if you got that stuff committed to memory back, in that setting. And a lot of times I don't. So like I just get beasted. And then in terms of the interviews that want you to build, like take a weekend and build a project committed to GitHub, and then we'll look through your project and evaluate you that way. Um,
I never had that, but
uh,
that sounds dope actually.
it is until you spend a weekend building out a project, and then Monday they call you and say that they offer the job to somebody else. That part sucks. You're still gaining experience. It's not like it's a net loss, but um, it is that part sucks. And the other part that is sort of like hidden in that type of interview is that maybe you maybe your experience doesn't have a lot of DevOps with it, right? Or um, maybe you are a front end developer that doesn't really ever scaffold a lot of projects, right? So now you're tasked to make an end to end project, and it's like, well, I don't do this like all the time. So naturally, you're faced with sort of beginner level problems. Like, all right, I got to get the SQLite database stood up, like, and connected with my, as part of one of them that I did was Python, which comes with like SQLite. So it's like, all right, get SQLite up, use the built-in like mapper to map it to these models, and then convert all these. Um, oh, this is how the format's coming in. All right, you end up doing a lot of stuff that you've never done on the job. So it doesn't end up. It tests overall ability to stand up an end-to-end project. That's what it tests. It doesn't necessarily test what you're good at. It just tests, can you build this thing start to finish per our specifications. And that can be tough, and it is a significant time commitment up front. Um,
I bet.
to the point where I would advise, like, don't. don't do it unless you really want to work for that particular company. Like if you're just looking for a job and they're just looking for somebody to fill a role, like that's a lot. That's you could spend that time learning more about other things. You know, like it is. Not to mention there is. I've learned I've gotten rejected by enough of them to not get emotionally damaged by them at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a certain level of deflation that comes with I just built this thing over the course of the entire weekend. I thought it was good. I thought I had it where it needed to go. I did my best. I sent it into them and they just crucified it,
Mm-hmm.
or they didn't even consider me for employment because they just gave it to somebody else. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
that sucks. Yeah, that part really does suck. So,
Yeah.
um, unfortunately, even with 3 years experience, like the landscape of the interview game didn't really improve that much for me. Just
Yeah.
because it's kind of a unique skill on its own. Like you kind of got to get good at prepping for interviews
Right.
to get good
And
at
they're different. They're
interviews.
you don't know who you're going to be sitting with, talking to.
Yep,
They may or may not be in tech. Honestly, depending
yep,
on what stage you're at in the process, what company. So they're
yep.
all very
And like I
different.
said,
There's it's hard
that
to prepare to. Yeah.
that Dallas job that I got offered, they only it was a full stack C# React job,
Mm-hmm.
and we only talked about things at a conceptual level, and I ended up
Mm-hmm.
getting the job offer. We didn't do a coding challenge. There was no nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I ended up getting the job. So I screwed it up because of some other decisions. But
Mm-hmm.
um, there are situations where people just interview you, and they just want to hear you talk about it. And personally, those are my favorite, but they're also a little more rare because um, you could kind of like fake your way around, just use a bunch of buzzwords and kind of fake your way around questions. Um, but like I interviewed where we were at Jado, right? And I just didn't have that good of an understanding of interfaces, and all their like most of their interview questions, besides the basic ones, were all geared around interfaces, and I didn't have the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't get the job offer. So um, it is kind of luck of the draw. Maybe you'll hit that interview that just perfectly lines up with what you've been studying.
Right.
Either way, onwards and upwards is always then the end result. Like, all
Right.
right, whether if you don't get the job, if you do get the job, you're still just going to be learning, growing. Like it doesn't really change um, your 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 course. It just
Mm-hmm.
changes your stresses in
Yeah.
terms of like I need a job because of my money and health insurance, and especially now during COVID and all that. Like it changes like the stress you're under.
Right.
But try not to let that distract you from just keep getting better at the technical competencies, and don't neglect the social skills if that's something you struggle with. And but at the end of the day, if you're looking for a job and you're sending out resumes, you should be sending out. I mean, tech resumes are easy to fill out. You got your resume, attach it, bam, done. Like this isn't like you're not applying to be a doctor or something. Like you should be putting out 15 resumes a day kind of deal. Like shotgun blast out the resumes,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you have less experience and you're not going to get as many calls, right?
Right. True. Yeah.
And then the other kind of choice at that stage would be like if a job comes your way that isn't quite up to maybe some of the market standards or whatever, like if it gets you in the door and gets you some experience, even if it's terrible experience, you're going to learn from it, you're going to grow,
Right.
and now you've got an extra thing to put on your resume. So
There you go.
um, yep.
So all right. So as we kind of wind down, I wanted to ask you this: what are some misconceptions that you had about working in tech that have like changed over the years now that you've been in the industry?
Yeah, so at a certain point I just assumed it would get easier. And I guess it has like the once you get the core, like all right, I know how JavaScript works. I need to know how this very specific thing works. Like it does get easier once
Mm-hmm.
you sort of have like a mental catalog of scenarios and just kind of base level knowledge or whatever, or intermediate level knowledge. It
Mm-hmm.
does get easier on that. But as soon as you get to that level, the challenges just get harder. So
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't get easier. It's always like stay the course, keep learning, stay the course, keep learning, keep getting better.
Mm-hmm.
And really, you just want to be a productive member of whatever team you're on.
Exactly.
So however they define that, tailor your effort to that, and
Mm-hmm.
give it your best effort. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other thing would be ego. Um, I had sort of like originally I had sort of stereotype, the Hollywood stereotype of dude that lives in his parents' basement that doesn't go outside. That's the guy writing code and stuff. One, that's not true. But two, it sometimes is. And, like it is sort of like it's a type. It's just like
Right.
anything else. There's spectrum,
Hmm.
and there are developers that are like that, right? And so what I'm getting at is I didn't realize how valuable. I always knew that social skills were valuable, right? Like you always like someone would ask me point blank out of, but yeah, they're valuable, of course. But
Hmm.
I didn't really understand why until I started working with more
Right.
developers that aren't good at it, right?
Right.
And
Extremely good at all the other stuff, like all this
yes,
crazy complicated stuff. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
yep, yep,
Yeah.
and it really like what that comes down to, like for me, is like everybody's brain is wired differently. Some people are good at some things
Exactly.
and bad at others. Excuse me, what's
Exactly.
going on? And you never know the whole picture. That's the
Right.
point, And
Hmm.
so just like you can learn something from the back end robot guy, he can learn something from you if you're the soft skill front end person.
Hmm.
Um, which I get. We could talk about that. Like we understand. We're talking about it. Yeah, of course, right? But not everybody is on the same page with that. There
Mm-hmm.
is sometimes you do run into ego,
Hmm.
and you got to know how to work with people like that without making it into a thing. Because the last thing you want to do is confront them. Because you confront someone with ego, it gets worse.
Hmm.
So learning how to, it's sort of like conflict resolution, but it isn't. It's sort of like conflict avoidance, knowing that the person talking to you is egomaniac, right?
Hmm.
Like, hey, in those situations, I tend to sort of like defer to their expertise. Like, I know you're really good at this. I need
Hmm.
help with this.
Hmm.
What can we do? And then you put them in the position where they're the big man on campus, so to speak, and and
Hmm.
and they're more helpful. Um, the other thing that I learned that really helped, I listened to a Tim Ferriss podcast where he was interviewing the founder of Shopify,
Hmm.
Tobias Lutka, I think his name is, and their whole company mantra is feedback is a gift, and that whole episode is about that idea where they're talking about like, look, a lot of what we do on a day-to-day basis is objective, and
Hmm.
you can talk about things being right or wrong objectively without getting offended personally. Like your self-worth isn't being challenged here. You put a solution forward that is objectively not the best one. Let's have a conversation as to why we can get there without it being like you suck, or you feeling like you suck, or whatever the case may be. There's
Right.
certain parts of the job that are just point blank objective. Some are subjective, and it is worth your while to learn how to tell the difference between the two. That's
Hmm.
that's what I've learned. Because on the subjective stuff, if you have an opinion, hey, if we're talking opinions, yours is just as good as anybody else most of the time. But if we're
Hmm.
talking objectively, like, no, this is how the page renders. This happens first, then this second. Like, this
Yeah.
is what needs to
Exactly.
happen. This is an
Exactly.
objective thing.
Yeah.
Then it's not about who's right or wrong. It's about what solution is best for the
Knowledge.
problem. And
Exactly.
and so it's sort of like, call it like a business centric approach. Like, what if you if
Hmm.
you take the business as the team? Like, what's best for the team? The best solution.
Right.
Whether I come up with it or somebody else does.
Right.
And I wish more people were like that, but maybe as time goes on, they
Hmm.
will be. But
That's
soft
good.
skills are huge, um,
Hmm.
and I think it's just an understanding of how things work. Like going into boot camp, I remember thinking like just seeing the Hollywood hacker typing it, just mashing on the keyboard, like they just took down the Pentagon. Yeah, you
Hmm.
think it's that easy, but then you get into the grind of every day, like another bug. Here we go.
Yeah.
And it's just a lot of hard work, and it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but if you can
Yeah.
stomach it, it's a good career.
I can agree with that. Like like you were saying before I went to boot camp, I didn't really know what to think about developers. And when I first started like applying for boot camps or get into it, like I don't know if you remember Iron Yard. Like
Yeah.
did you know? Did you hear about Iron Yard? Yeah, yeah. All right.
Yep.
So for anybody watching, Iron Yard is like a defunct boot camp in Detroit now. But they were here, and like before boot camps already started getting popular. And I interviewed with the director there. He was telling me that he went to boot camp. He didn't like learn this till later in life and stuff like that. He was like, dude, He's like, I've been doing this for 5 years, and I just now feel like I know what I'm doing. And I remember thinking to myself, because obviously he's a smart dude and everything. I was like, bro, I can't imagine something being so hard that somebody says that 5 years into doing it, they just now feel like they know what they're doing. But me being going on, this is year 3, like post boot camp, like 2 going on 3 into the job, like yeah, I can feel that. It's so weird to say because obviously, like, I have a job, right? I go to work every day. You have a job as well, but like, I can totally resonate with that feeling of like, sometimes it just feels like you're relearning things over again, or it feels like for me, I'm just in a better place to re-understand things that I just the first time I saw it, blown out of my mind. Like it's just too much, like totally new concept, foreign concept. Like I'm not, but then over time, like you see it, you hear enough things enough times, you see enough things, enough situations, it starts to make a little bit more sense, a little bit more sense. But still, I want to get to that place where I feel like fluent, I guess maybe. Like I feel like right now in coding, I feel like kind of like with my Spanish, right? I feel like I have survival Spanish. I feel like I have like survival coding skills. Like it just in comparison to what I know is out there now, I feel like that's where I'm at. Versus so that person who's at that solid mid stage in their career, maybe where it's like I know there's a gap between me and being a senior, but I'm solid where I'm at. You know what I mean? I want to be at that place, which is I can see that being another year or 2 years out.
I can give you an example. Like, all right, so basically like the more you jump frameworks, skill sets, languages, the longer it's going to take to get to that level, right? Like,
absolutely.
I think learning multiple languages is very great. Like, that's just the way I learn. But if you specialize, you'll get to that place faster. But it's a user case by case basis whether or not that's advisable or not, right? But I'll give you an example. So I showed up at this 2 months ago when I started this job, right? And it was like, all right, introduce yourself to the team moment. Hey, I'm Justin. I'm coming from Ford. I was a contractor at Ford. I've got React experience. I'm generally, JavaScript my best language. But I have 3 years experience with .NET ecosystem, MVC, this, that, and the other thing, right? And one of the first things I ended up doing was getting tossed on like a console application, like a WinForms application, like Dev Express, basically.
I've never touched WinForms. All the C# I've done, I've never built WinForms.
It's a totally different architecture, right?
Right. Yeah.
I went to United Shore, and my starting point was MVC with Razor Pages and jQuery, right? This is before that, right? Or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So I get there, and now I'm like, I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know. Like I'm a little rusty. I hadn't been doing C# recently, but that only took a couple of days to get back in the swing of it, and then like. But I'm looking at this application, I'm like, I don't know how this stuff is structured. And it's got like a visual editor that you can drag and drop, and then the code auto updates and stuff. And stuff's getting overwritten, and all the stuff's moving on. I'm like, I don't know. I basically have to go back to the team. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's not even MVC. It's like NVVM or something. It's like a whole different type of architecture, yeah.
So that's what got me, like, speaking of, like, ego, there's a lot of, this actually sums everything up pretty good. Like, I come back to the team, and now my first problem that involved anything but front end code, I'm like stonewalled, and I'm trying to explain to them like, no, like I understand MVC, I know like APIs, controllers, all this stuff. Like I'm good on all this stuff. I don't understand this part. And like one of the guys is like, oh yeah, you seem more like a front end guy. That comment where it's like, JavaScript Justin or whatever, and it's like, all right, one, fuck you, right? All right, guys. I played football in college. You don't have to tell me about ego and macho-ness. Like, all right, Mr. Guy. But then it was like I recognized what was going on, so I didn't let it bother me because like at the end of the day, I knew it wasn't true. So it's like, all right, I just gotta get through this and get onto a project where I can actually show that I'm not like I actually know some of this stuff. And that's like the project that I'm working on now. It's MVC, .NET Frame, .NET Core. And I can navigate, I can make features, updates, changes, I can do this kind of thing, and I'm sort of slowly like building up my reputation. But to your point of like feeling comfortable in something, like even if I walked into this job feeling just hossed out at C#, .NET, ASP.NET, MVC, Core, whatever, like React, like all this kind of stuff. I'm still day one. I'm throwing the curveball of
Wind forms.
Dev Express WinForms application that I've never seen before, and it's like,
Exactly.
oh my god, like
Yeah, yeah, and
what?
because that's kind of an older school technology, it's not even something that people would be learning right now. It's not something you would be in boot camp actively being taught, or like it's
Nope.
not the first thing that would come to mind to even do after
Yep.
you leave boot camp or you learn the code. That you would like,
But
let me go
way
build
more
a
likely.
WinForms app. Exactly.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
way more likely because it is older. It's way more likely you're going to run into it as legacy code baked
for
into your
sure,
current business process,
for
right?
sure.
And
Yep.
that's kind of the danger, like the something that boot camps have to be careful about. They got to stay. They can't get too far ahead of where businesses are at because they ultimately want their graduates to go into businesses and be
Mhm.
productive. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, like you're never gonna like even you become the best wizard, full stack web developer in the world. Like, well, have you ever worked on embedded systems? Like
Oh,
how
there's
many times
always
you're gonna
something.
feel like, and yep,
There's always something out there. Yeah,
yeah, and then
hundred
that's like
percent.
the that's something that it's kind of like a sitting under the weight of tech, like and everything that's included in tech. Once you've been under the weight of that for long enough, it's something you like with time you start to understand better in that there are so many like this field is exploding like individual segments of this field are exploding, let alone the whole field itself, and there's just too much, like there's too much for any one person to learn in any one career. So you
Yeah.
got to try to stay focused on what it is that you're going to be doing for your job, and then if you want to
Mhm.
look at some other stuff as a hobby, go ahead and do it. But if you're
Mhm.
saying this is the skill I want for my job, that's very different than, hey, I just want to build a Raspberry Pi,
Absolutely.
Pac-Man video game, or whatever, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it's very tempting to get pulled off because there's so much stuff that's so interesting. It's very tempting to get pulled in one of those directions, but
Mhm.
maintaining your like focus on, the
Absolutely.
balance between focusing on enough things to get a job, but then a broad enough things to where you're learning enough about the overall way things work.
Love it.
Um, it's a dance, and then you get better at it with time. But there's no real method to the madness at this point. It's just mostly madness.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
but
real.
based on rewind all the way to where I'm sitting in my house, waiting for my LSAT scores, like researching a career in tech, looking at the career growth numbers, looking at all this kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Going back to that decision, I don't regret it at all. Not
Mhm.
even for a second.
Me either.
It
Yeah.
all played the numbers played out accurately in terms of how
Yeah.
things have progressed since then.
Yep.
I there are parts of the job that are frustrating for sure. Um,
Yeah.
and they can get tiresome. It's kind of a grind sometimes, but
Mhm.
um, maintaining work life balance, self care, like all these things are all part
Mhm.
of it. But that's outside of that initial decision. Like the scope of that initial decision is this a career? And the answer was yes. Was it a good
Mhm.
career? Yes. Are there job prospects? Yes. Have I grown? Have the jobs grown? Yes. Like all like check 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 check. Here
Mhm.
I am down the road, making more money than I did then. My life is way more stable than it was then. I've got health insurance, like all that
Mhm.
stuff that you don't appreciate until you don't have a job, right?
Mhm.
And I can't really like. I definitely caught some breaks along the way. Like there's no doubt about that. Like I said, I was lucky to have a family to lean on. I was lucky to, um, get hired at United Shore without having to try to grind into a job with no experience. That sort of
Mhm.
boot camp
Mhm.
arrangement definitely helped. It got me going.
Mhm.
Um, which that said, I would sort of liken a boot camp sort of like to what I've heard about MBA programs, where like a lot of what I've heard about MBA programs is it's not so much about what you learn, like because what you learn is learnable and you can kind of get the information without the MBA program, but the MBA itself, the value really comes
It's.
with the professors that you meet, the network that you build, and then the other people
Mhm.
that are in your MBA program that you meet and work with. Like I got this job because of somebody I worked with at United Shore, which is because of I got into United Shore because of the boot camp that I went to. So you
Mhm.
can track the progression, but along the way, if I would have pissed Chelsea off or something, maybe I
Mhm.
don't get that message because she doesn't like me, kind of deal. So
Mhm.
definitely don't neglect the network, like the network, and it isn't. You're gonna get 15. Once you get enough experience, you're going to have 15 recruiters a day asking to be your friend on LinkedIn. that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about me and you, our relationship, like our my other developer friends that I talk to on a regular basis, reaching
Mm-hmm.
out, getting involved in open source communities. Like these are the people that the next time you don't have a job, they're going to be the ones that know, hey man, yeah. And not only do they know where the job is, but they know you. And I've worked. And look, you get a recommendation, and sometimes that's
Even
all it
down to the
takes.
recruiters and everything. Yeah, I
Yep.
agree. I agree.
Yeah, exactly. And so I mean, um, it's a tough one. Like I said, so if could I, like looking back, could I have taught myself the fundamentals better if I was just learning on my own than what the boot camp did? Yeah, I probably could have. Like I would have been more job ready day one if I would have just done it myself. But that's me from the future saying that, right? Because half the battle is knowing what to look for and
What
what
to
to
even
study.
learn exactly.
And yeah, and that's something that the boot camp provided. And
Hmm.
then additionally, the career break is it came via the boot camp. So
Yep.
um, there's a lot of value in like getting in the door is the objective. So if you have the opportunity to go to a boot camp that's going to help you get in the door somewhere because of other arrangements that they've made with other companies, then it's a really good thing, you know. But to
Hmm.
to to think that you're going to walk into a boot camp, learn a bunch of stuff, and then come out the other end knowing everything you need to know to be ready,
Yeah,
an expert developer. That's just not
it's
realistic.
not
So
real. Yeah,
um,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
This
this
is
is good. It's a good trip down memory lane. You know, like this is not the day to day grind gets in the way of like reflecting on some of this stuff. But
reflecting on stuff.
it's
Hmm.
it's good, and I'm glad I could come here and
Yeah, it's been great.
just give some perspective to some people that are trying to make these same decisions because it's not easy. Like getting through. Like I mean, we already have enough data inputs coming into our domes on a daily basis as U.S. citizens, right?
Hmm.
Now to just add a text stream to that, where you're trying to figure out, you got all these different opinions. Like, is C# better than Java? It's like, well, you're asking the wrong question, dummy. Like, better is not the right question. Like,
Right.
but you got to read, we got to read through those articles and see the videos and
Takes a while to
a
get there and understand that. Yeah.
couple resources real quick that have been indispensable for me recently. Viewmastery.com is a good yeah, it's like $20 a month, but part of that goes to the Vue community itself. Recently that's been very good, but that one JavaScript course I told you about, understanding the weird parts of JavaScript, was a big like milestone course in my career. Traversy Media, the YouTube channel,
Yep.
that guy puts out a ton of like tremendous content. He does a very very good job, and I really like his stuff. I mean, there's like coding phase and stuff. And there's some other people as well, but Traversy is the one that I kind of find myself on the most. Um, and then a ton of articles. I have a bunch of books and tutorials and a lot of tech documentation online and all that kind of stuff. But we live in an amazing time, man. Like all the information, all the answers to your questions are out there. All you got to do is ask for them, and learn how to find them. And that's something as a new student of tech, code and stuff. That's something that's in your control. Um, so get after it.
Yeah, man. Justin, this has been great, man. I appreciate the honesty, the realness, especially about just life after boot camp too. It's one thing to go through boot camp, but then like that's only part
Now
of the
what?
battle. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think this has been great, man. Appreciate you. I'll definitely be texting you to catch up and everything and talk some more
Okay.
off cam. But yeah, brother, appreciate you, man, coming by.
Thanks, man. And if you need any of the links to those resources, whatever, just let me know, and I'll get them to you so you can distribute them. It's
Yeah,
no problem.
definitely,
So
definitely. Sounds good,
good
bro.
to good to chat it up with you, man. I appreciate it.
For sure, man. I'll let you go, and then like I said, we'll be in touch soon, bro.
Okay. All right. Take care. Bye,
All right,
everybody.
brother. Talk soon. Peace.
See ya.
So yeah, guys, that's my boy Justin. I hope y'all were able to get some value out of that conversation. So yeah, be sure to let me know down below any other like questions, comments that y'all might have. We can address it in another stream. Like I said, Justin's been on the channel before, so I definitely don't mind having him back again. Like I said, we're good friends off YouTube in real life. So yeah, definitely don't mind if you guys found that helpful. But yeah. Appreciate you guys. Be sure to like the stream if it was helpful. Subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll catch you guys next video, alright? This is Darian with Dana Dev. I'll catch you guys later. Peace.